Okay, so we're going to start. Welcome to this session, Trauma-Informed Teaching. And I'm just going to start by giving you a definition of trauma. It is the response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, causes feelings of helplessness, diminishes their sense of self and their ability to feel the full range of emotions and experiences. And so it's not to say that trauma only includes child abuse of any kind, but it is probably one of the bigger factors that you will encounter as a teacher. And so something just to keep in mind as we're going through, because a lot of this will actually focus on that kind of abuse in school, in children. And so here are some statistics that I find quite alarming. That before the age of 15, 33% of the population experiences some form of childhood maltreatment. So a third of the population. And more than 9 in 10 of those people who are victims of childhood physical and/or sexual abuse did not report the abuse to either police or child protection services before they turned 15. In fact, the majority of the victims, 67%, do not speak to anyone, including friends and family. And this is important for us to know because it really tells us that there are going to be children in our presence who are experiencing some form of abuse. 2 in every 5 Aboriginal people, 40% of that population, reported having experienced childhood physical and/or sexual abuse, a larger proportion than non-Aboriginal people. Abuse during childhood was prevalent among Aboriginal women compared to non-Aboriginal women. And almost half of people aged 15 and older who identified as gay, lesbian, and bisexual reported having experienced childhood physical and/or sexual abuse. This compares with only 30% of the heterosexual population. These are numbers from Statistics Canada, and they are very important for us to understand as teachers. So how is it determined that a child is at risk? Most children who do enter some form of care, therapy, seeing a psychiatrist or hospitalization, and it's suspected that there may be abuse, are given what's known as the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale. And this scale measures various components of abuse that could be physical, emotional, or sexual. It also measures neglect, physical and emotional neglect, and household dysfunction, where someone living in the household, not necessarily a parent, but someone in the household has a mental illness, has been incarcerated, has a mother in the home who is regularly violently treated. There is substance abuse of any kind in the home, and divorce. So right from the scale, we can see that there are already children in our classrooms who are experiencing some form of adverse childhood experience because many kids come from divorced homes. But what we would say is that children who have a score of 4 or more on the ACEs scale are really the ones who are at a higher risk. And so we're going to watch a short video right now that's really talking about what happens to a child when they are experiencing trauma and what happens to their brains.
A child's experiences early in life are important building blocks for the developing brain. Genes, nature, are like the blueprint. They provide the basic framework for brain development. However, genes do not design the brain completely. Environmental influences, nurture, fine-tune how the brain works by shaping which brain connections get used. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent, whereas ones that do not get much use fade away. Together, genes and the environment build the foundation for all future development. Safe, stable, and nurturing relationships early in life lead to healthy development. But children's brains capture other experiences as well. Stressful events. However, not all stress is bad. Positive stress involves normal childhood experiences, like starting daycare or meeting a new person for the first time. This stress is essential for healthy development because it helps children develop coping skills and confidence. But when stress is frequent, chronic, and uncontrolled, it is toxic to children, especially when they do not have a caregiver to provide support or buffer the stress. Adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, such as abuse, neglect, exposure to intimate partner violence, parental depression or addiction, and poverty, are toxic stressors which could lead to lifelong changes in learning and behavior. ACEs early in development can impact social, emotional, and cognitive functioning, increased risk-taking behavior such as drinking and substance use, and increased risk of disease, disability, and social problems later in life. The question is, how do adverse childhood experiences impact a lifelong development? One of the most important systems in our body is our stress system. It's activated when we experience stress. We become alert, our heart rate increases, and so do our stress hormone levels, cortisol and adrenaline. Our body is ready to react, what is known as fight or flight. A short period of time after the stress is over, or if a child receives support from a caregiver, the stress response turns off and the body returns to a normal state. Adverse childhood experiences create stress responses that stay active, and without the support of a caregiver, the system has difficulty shutting off completely. This constant and prolonged activation can affect immune system functioning and increase the chances of sickness, infection, and disease. Prolonged activation of stress hormones is also toxic to the brain. Certain areas of the brain are more vulnerable to toxic stress, including the executive center or the brain's control center, an area important for solving complex problems, attention, reasoning, impulsivity, inhibition, and learning. A second area is the emotional center, the brain's alarm system, which is involved in processing and interpreting emotions and the ability to control impulses. The third area is the memory and learning center, the brain's filing cabinet, which plays a major role in learning and the formation and retrieval of memories. Science shows that adverse childhood experiences impact all of these brain centers. Behaviorally, what we begin to see is emotional distress, poor emotion regulation, greater impulsivity, learning difficulties, and physical and mental health problems. More recently, science has begun to look at how ACEs cause changes in gene expression through a process called epigenetics, which helps us understand how nature and nurture interact. Epigenetics causes changes in the way genes work without changing the DNA code itself. This occurs through chemical changes influencing how the code is used. In other words, genes are like the hardware in a computer. They determine the boundaries of what is possible. However, we need an operating system to tell the hardware what to do. Epigenetics is like the operating system directing the function of a gene's DNA hardware. The genes we are born with are the genes that we have for life, but experiences like nutrition, exercise, smoking, stressors, and relationships all affect our biology. Adverse childhood experiences are associated with epigenetic changes related to stress, brain development, cognition, and systems associated with mental and physical health. Changes that happen early in brain development are more likely to be enduring and are possibly passed on to future generations as well. The good news is that positive, supportive relationships at any stage in life can make a difference. However, supporting families and children early on will help prevent many of these negative outcomes. One of the key ingredients for healthy development is having warm, loving, and actively engaged caregivers. This involves promoting serve and return interactions, where caregivers actively and warmly engage with the child, making eye contact, responding to sounds, words, gestures, emotional needs, and sharing experiences like reading and play. Providing programs that support caregivers to strengthen these abilities are the blocks that build healthy foundations for life.
So in terms of what they're calling caregivers, I would put us as educators into that same category because we are working with children on a regular basis. They do look for us for caring, compassionate relationships. And so it's important for us to understand who are the children in front of us, who are the children that we are dealing with every day. And what is important for you to know as a teacher is you're going to start your year by starting with intentions, setting an intention for how you want to be with your students, how you want them to be with each other. So one of the first things you need to think about at the beginning of the school year is how are you going to create a safe classroom where children can learn to be brave? And what do I mean by that? So a safe classroom is where they know that they can trust you, where they know that when they come to school, they will be protected. They'll be protected from what may be going on outside of the school, but also what's going on inside the school, if there's any bullying or any kinds of scary experiences for them. So you are setting a very clear intention to make the classroom safe. Recently, I've been hearing a lot of talk about there is no such thing as a safe classroom, that we need to create brave spaces instead of safe spaces. And while I understand that thinking, we want to create a space where children are brave enough to speak up, brave enough to confide in us. But from my perspective of being a longtime teacher, the first place to start is making the classroom safe. The first place is about emotional safety. So letting the kids know that in your classroom, you are really going to have their back. The other thing that is important to set an intention about is building your own emotional intelligence or your own EQ. And so I use a format that has 5 major components. They are self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal skills, decision-making, and stress tolerance. And so as a teacher, you are going to encounter all of those things. You have to see yourself, set your intention for yourself as a teacher. You also, in that regard of self-perception, have to understand your own emotions. How emotionally aware are you? And then in the next piece, the self-expression, how are you expressing emotion? So if you are expressing emotion in socially appropriate ways, that's amazing because you're modeling that for your students. But if you're one of the teachers who's yelling at the kids all the time, frustrated all the time, you're actually modeling a lack of emotional intelligence. So it's about keeping your own emotional intelligence in check and building it wherever you can. Perhaps looking at the areas where you need to have a little extra help. We all have those areas. It's not that we're always going to be on the same plane. We're going to have some dips. So look at yourself and try to imagine yourself as that emotionally intelligent teacher. Whenever students are talking to you, you want to make sure that you are listening. Listening with your eyes, ears, and your heart. And so you're actually bringing compassion or empathy into the listening situation. Sometimes kids are telling us things that are really important, but our attention is elsewhere. Our attention is on the other kids, or our attention is on the devices or our email or something like that. That kid is getting a very strong message from you that you are not interested. So when a child approaches you and wants to discuss something with you, you need to be fully present, listening with your eyes, ears, and your heart. And then what you want to do is be proactive and continue to learn. The fact is that you're in the master's program, you're here for 2 years, but the reality is we can't teach you absolutely everything there is to know about teaching. And so a lot of it is learning on the job, being with the students, taking additional courses after you're finished here. It's about continuing to learn. And if you are interested in trauma-informed teaching, there is a ton of courses and information available for you because you will have a student of trauma for sure, probably every year. So right now I'm going to stop the share in a moment and I'm going to read you a story, and then I'm going to put you into a breakout room and you're going to have a chance to discuss with your colleagues the story. And then I'm going to read the same story, but with a different lens on the story. So let me just stop the share. It's Friday again. Most of my classmates are rushing out the door, smiling, cheering, and clamoring to get home. See you Monday. Have a great weekend. They yell as they brush past me. My friends are off to put their school week to rest so that they can play, have some fun, and just watch television. I often wonder where their parents will be taking them this weekend. I watch them admiringly as they disappear into the distance. They seem to have it all, but me? I'm tired, lonely, and consumed by the trepidation which exists in my bones. It is there with me as I shuffle through my so-called life. I guess I should go home, although my inner voice is beckoning to me, run. The voice is not very loud because it has no idea what it really means to run. It's something I heard on TV once when I watched a show about a kid whose life mirrored mine. But where did she end up? On the street? She was filthy, dirty, exhausted, and hungry. I don't think I can do that yet. I'm too young, scared. But I feel like I have nowhere to turn. There's no one who will understand if I do try to tell them my innermost secrets. I'm also ashamed. My dad drinks too much, and when he does, he always yells at my mom and me. She doesn't do anything. She just sits in the chair with her head down, crying. Me, I'm filled with rage, but I can't fight back because I'm just a stupid girl. At least that's what my dad says. He says all women are stupid. Sometimes I'm confused by this because I usually get good marks in school, but he must be right because my mom doesn't say anything to correct him. I can't yell back at him because if I do, he'll be furious and start throwing things around. I'm frightened. I don't want to make him mad because when he's mad, he drinks and sometimes he hits my mom. I can't take that chance because it's probably my fault that he drinks. I just sit there and listen and I try to push the confusing thoughts away. I try to imagine a place in my mind where I might like to be. This place is a safe place. It's a place where people understand me, where they smile at me, where they care for me. It's not a place where they will judge me if they did happen to find out my secret. I can't take that chance though. I can't tell them because if they know my secret, they won't like me anymore. They have to like me. It's really all I have, although sometimes it's hard for me to make them like me. I'm always watching. I watch my dad to see what it is that I do wrong to make him drink and hit my mom. I watch my teacher to find out why she yells at us. I think I'm being quiet and doing my work, but still she yells. Sometimes she sounds like my dad. Her face turns red and she slams the meter stick on the desk. It sounds like my dad's fist when he hits the wall or when he hits my mom too hard. Sometimes my teacher sends kids to the corner to face the wall. I don't like it when that happens because they always seem so embarrassed and all the other kids tease them. I don't tease them because I know how they feel. Oh well, I guess I'll go home. Everyone else seems to be gone. I walk slowly because I have to carefully check the streets to make sure my dad is not staggering up one of them. I stop at the corner store owned by a couple named George and Maria. I buy a custard square and sit in the park to eat before I have to walk the final block. I put the key in the lock and call out, hoping to hear my mom call back. If she does, it means everything will be okay. If she doesn't, I brace myself for what is to come. When I go in, my mom is laying on the couch in the dark. She's sick again. She hasn't been feeling well for a few days, ever since my dad stopped drinking. I asked her what's wrong, and she says it's her nerves. I suppose I'll have to cook supper tonight because my mom can never cook when her nerves are bad. As the evening wears on, I suddenly realize that it's too late and my dad is not home yet. My stomach starts to churn as I feel that sinking feeling coming over me. I wonder if he will be home or if he's off on another binge. I fall asleep on the couch and wake in the middle of the night. I didn't hear my dad come in, so I saunter into my room. When I wake up the next morning, I make myself breakfast and watch television. The rest of the day passes much like any other. My life seems so useless. I look outside to see the kids and their friends running up the street or playing in the park, but I can't go because I have to stay home with my mom when her nerves are bad. On Sunday, we have dinner and I go into my room to get some rest. As I lie in bed, suddenly hearing the key to the door scratching. It's him, he's back, and that scratching noise means he's too drunk to find the keyhole. My mind races and my stomach becomes hard like a rock. I can't move. I'm immobilized, frozen in my bed, listening, waiting. The door finally opens and he comes staggering in, swaying, bumping into the table and knocking over the lamp. A long series of ugly, vulgar cuss words fills the room, and I'm filled with shame once again. What if the neighbors hear him? What if they saw him staggering up the street? What if he'd been in a fight and his face was all bashed in like it was the last time? What can I do? I feel so helpless. Helen, where the hell is my supper? What's the matter with you? All you women are so alike. You're so goddamn stupid. Get out of here and give me my supper. There's no sound, no movement, no response. I hear him weave his way up the hall to her bedroom. Get out of bed, get my supper. I can't, I'm sick, get your own supper. I cringe when I hear this hostile exchange because I know what's coming. I try to get up to make supper, but I'm too late. I hear the sudden smack of lightning quick blow to the body, which makes me want to throw up every time I experience it. My heart is pounding. I know I won't sleep very well tonight, but I have to, because if I don't, I won't be able to stand the pain I'm feeling deep within my soul. Suddenly, I hear a thud as my dad misses the bed and hits the floor where he's likely to sleep until he's sober. When I get up in the morning, I tiptoe around. I stop and see my mother's silhouette in the shadows. I turn on the light to see the aftermath of the night before. I look at the clock. I want to help, but I can't. What can I do? I'm a kid. I have to go to school. I'll be all right, she says. Just go to school and don't worry about me. He won't get up for a while. I'll be fine. But please come home right after school in case I need you. I hurry out the door, running up the street so I'm not late. My heart beats faster as I trip and my books scatter all over the street. I bend over to pick them up as I hear the school bell ringing in the distance. A lump forms in my throat and I want to cry because I'm going to be late for the third time this month. I head for the main office, bracing myself for the school secretary, who I know will yell at me, telling me that I'm always late and I should be smarter than that. I slowly take the late slip and head for my class. I'm not in any hurry because I hear my teacher from the hallway. What do you mean you forgot your homework? How many times have I told you? What is the matter with you? I hear the class laughing and I can well imagine that someone is being ridiculed for some reason or other. My head begins to pound. Here I am back at school on Monday morning, and things are no different here than they are at home. The only difference is that my teacher isn't drunk. I doubted if she would hit any of us, but I know she doesn't like us. It's like at home when she yells, though, because no one can say anything to her. If they do, it'll always be worse for them. Just before I get to the door, I hear her yell, "Who is that sneezing? What are you doing at school if you have such a bad cold? Your mother should have kept you home." As I walk in the door, I feel her steely glare. Her eyes are like daggers as they pierce through me. I'm thankful that she doesn't say anything directly to me, but she makes the whole class sit silently while I go to my desk. I try not to make any noise as I slide sheepishly into my seat. I start my day listening to the lesson, but soon my mind begins to wander as I visualize my dad and mom at home alone together. I wonder if everything will be all right when I get home. My mind fades in and out during the day. I'm frequently jolted back to reality when I hear the sound of my teacher's voice humiliating another student for talking while they are supposed to be doing their work. Sometimes I'm afraid in this class, but I don't know what is expected of me. Sometimes I'm afraid to put my hand up when I know the answer because I'm stupid and I don't want anyone else to find out. Sometimes I'm so tired that I just want to put my head down on my desk and fall asleep. Sometimes I just want to cry. I struggle through the day, and when the bell rings, I have mixed emotions. I don't really want to stay here because I don't feel very safe, but I'm afraid to go home. Maybe one day I'll run away, or maybe one day I will find that safe place. But right now, I can only imagine. So what I'm going to do right now is put you into a breakout room and have you discuss the kind of school or classroom that you heard about, and how does that make you feel as a person who is studying to become a teacher? Okay, so I'm opening the rooms. Marina, do you see the prompt for the room? Hi, Jessica. I'm going to put you into a breakout room.
Hi.
Hi. I'll put you in the room right now, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Just want to say hi, Jackie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
It's so nice to see all these friendly faces here. I miss you. I'll see you Monday, though, a week Monday.
A week
Or
Monday.
a week next week. Maybe not
Tuesday.
Monday. Yeah, maybe not Monday, but a week next week.
Yeah.
All right, so welcome back, everyone. We'll just take a few thoughts. What are people's thoughts about the story and what you discussed with your group? Anyone?
I can go.
Okay.
One of the things that really stood out to me was kind of the concept where if she's not cooking dinner, she's not going to eat
Mm-hmm.
because her dad is unable to do it and then her mom's unable to do it. So I think like for someone who's young, and I got the impression that she is a little girl, that having to deal with that responsibility at such a young age on top of everything that's going on must be extremely stressful for her.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, so there's many layers to the story, right? Thanks, Janice. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go. So we talked about how it was sad that not only did she not feel safe at home, but she didn't feel safe at school, right? And I think, and you've talked about this a lot, Jackie, like having that safe environment for kids is so important as teachers. And it almost seemed like the teacher was outdated. Like in all our heads, we imagined an older teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Like the smacking of the ruler stick, like things like that just don't seem, even growing up, I haven't seen anyone that. But I have had teachers that have screamed at us and yelled at us for not doing our homework. So maybe if, I think the teacher failed. She didn't recognize the signs. Instead of yelling at her for being late all the time, yelling at her for not doing her homework or not participating, she didn't open up that discussion and asked why. Oh, well, why is it that you're late? Or why is it that you have trouble not finishing your homework? So I think the teacher really, really failed in this circumstance for not recognizing those signs in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Not bothering to take the time to really listen, right? Absolutely. Anyone else?
Yeah, just also going off of Sam's point, it wasn't also that the classroom wasn't safe and that her home wasn't safe, but the entire school was creating an unsafe environment. Like she talks about how the secretary was scowling as she gave her that late note again, and how everyone was kind of getting on her case, and even just walking down the hallway, hearing her teacher's voice gave her that sense of dread.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine that being part of this kid's life day in and day out. So I'm going to share a different version of the same story. The other story was called The Unsafe Place, and this story is now called The Safe Place. It's Friday again. Most of my classmates are rushing out the door, cheering and clamoring to get home. See you Monday. Have a good weekend, they yell as they brush past me. My friends are off to put their schoolwork to rest so that they can play, have some fun, and just relax while watching some television. I often wonder where their parents will be taking them this weekend. I watch them admiringly as they disappear into the distance. They seem to have it all. I hold back. I don't want to leave this place. I love it here. I feel like this is my home. I'll miss my teachers, Miss Kohara and Mr. Harris, and I'll miss my friends. I feel safe here. Everything is predictable. I can count on them. Miss Kohara says it's important to welcome students and to let them know that I'm going to accept them. Miss Kohara nurtures us. Sometimes she says she mothers us too much. I don't think that's possible. I like her mothering. It makes me feel safe and loved. Mr. Harris says kids need a place where they want to be, where they feel comfortable. It should be a safe place where they get positive reinforcement, good feedback, encouragement, love, and plenty of learning opportunities. At home, things are not like here. My dad drinks too much, and when he does, he always yells at my mom and me. She doesn't do anything. She just sits in the chair with her head down crying. Me, I'm filled with rage, but I can't fight back because I'm just a stupid girl. At least that's what my dad says. He says all women are stupid, but I'm confused by this because I usually get good marks in school. Both of my teachers tell me I'm a good student. They praise my efforts and encourage me, but my dad must be right because my mom doesn't say anything to correct him. I can't yell back at him because if I do, he'll be furious and start throwing things around. I'm frightened. I don't want to make him mad because when he's angry, he drinks and sometimes he hits my mom. I can't take that chance because it probably is my fault that he drinks. I just sit there and listen and I try to push the confusing thoughts away. I try to visualize that place in my mind where I long to be. This place is my safe place. It's my school, a place where people understand me, where they smile at me, where they care for me. It doesn't matter if they know my secret. They probably don't need to know because they like me for the person I am. At home, I'm always watching. I watch my dad to see what it is that I do wrong to make him drink and hit my mom. I don't have to watch my teachers though. They're kind and compassionate. They understand all of us. They seem to know when something is bothering us and they give us a caring look. That look melts the ice in my veins, the ice that threatens to harden me to life's injustices. Sometimes Miss Kohara asks students to stay in for a while, just to talk. She says she finds it amazing that kids will tell you when you have them on a one-on-one. Sometimes kids will tell you important things that are bothering them. She says she wants to know as much about us as she can so that she can help us. Lots of times she tells us stories about when she was in school. She says she used to have trouble reading. I think she tells us these stories to inspire us. She wants us to know that if we work hard, we will be successful. I think she genuinely cares about us and how we will do in the future. Another thing I like about my teachers is the fact that they don't scream at us or humiliate us like some teachers do. They always accept us. They try hard to understand us and they are sensitive and warm. Miss Kohara's smile is infectious. Our class is harmonious and we all feel like we are part of her family. It's almost as if she knows how we feel. It's as if she puts herself in our shoes. I'm not the only one who likes being in her class. We all feel the same way. We like Mr. Harris too. He makes learning fun. He gives us different ways of doing our work and keeps us interested. We really had fun when we turned the cafeteria and the portables into learning centers so we could explore and experiment with new ideas. Both Miss Kohara and Mr. Harris seem conscious of caring for us, and we in turn care for them and strive to do our best. Unfortunately, it's Friday. I have to go home. Everyone else seems to be gone. I walk slowly because I have to carefully check the streets. I stop at the corner store, get my custard slice, and sit in the park before I go home. I put the key in the lock and call out, hoping to hear my mom call back. If she does, it means everything will be okay. If she doesn't, I brace myself for what's to come. When I go in, my mom is lying on the couch in the dark. She's sick again. She hasn't been feeling well for a few days. My stomach turns when I realize that my dad is not home yet. I wonder if he will be home or if he's off on another binge. I fall asleep on the couch, wake up in the middle of the night, and I didn't hear him, so I saunter into my room. When I wake up the next morning, I make myself breakfast and watch some television. The day passes like any other day. However, I'm not going to dwell on my life at this point. My life has purpose. I have hopes and dreams. Miss Kohara and Mr. Harris always talk about the future and possibilities that life holds for us. Miss Kohara encourages us to believe in ourselves, to give ourselves credit. She reminds us to find our strengths and to understand our weaknesses so that we can overcome them. I would love to be a teacher like her someday. On Sunday, we have dinner and I go into my room to try to get myself ready for Monday. I love Mondays. Mondays are safe. So I've shared those two stories with you for a very specific reason. Or two very specific reasons. One, I feel like they really demonstrate the world of some children who are in our classrooms. But two, those stories are my stories. I wrote those stories during my doctoral work when I was at OISE. When I entered the doctoral program, I was trying to figure out what would I want to write about, and I kept going back to wanting to understand what helps teachers make caring and safe spaces for their students. And so I did some detective work and I tracked down Hope Kohara and Neil Harris, who were indeed my grade 7 and 8 teachers. And they became participants in my doctoral research. And we explored all of the ways that they helped to make a safe place for me. And what was interesting was they both remembered me. Hope was a first-year teacher when I was in her class in grade 7, and trust me, you will have your first year of teaching forever etched in your brain. So she had very vivid memories. She'd even kept some of my notebooks, which I actually have in my office at OISE. But it was so interesting because for them, they really understood the concept of empathy and compassion. And it wasn't like they felt like they had to do anything over and above what they knew. They just knew how to be caring teachers, and they exemplified that. And I give them full credit for the work that they did for me and the space that they created. And I did indeed go on to become a teacher. And so I'm going to go back to the screen share here and just talk about what are some of the things that you can, in fact, do for the kids in your class, because you can do a lot. So what you can do is look at your own emotional intelligence, as I've said before, but also teach it to students. Teach emotional intelligence, teach them and hold them accountable, and hold yourself accountable. I use with my pod that I'm working with right now, we draw an emotional intelligence card every day. And so, for example, it looks like this. This one says, respect others' feelings. You can't really see it because of my background. But then it says, I will watch how my feelings affect others. So as a teacher, I can draw that card, and then throughout the day, I can check in with the kids. I can see, you know, I noticed that you weren't necessarily respecting somebody's feelings just then, but yet that's our card that we're working on. How could that be improved? So I'm holding them accountable. I'm holding myself accountable. The next one here, building inclusion, so important. And those of you who are my students know how much I talk about this. When kids do not feel they belong, that feeling of exclusion promotes trauma. If they are already coming from trauma, you are making it 100 times worse. So ensure that the kids feel included in your classroom, that they belong, that they can work with you, and they can work with every other kid in the class. So build that time at the beginning of the year so that they know everybody. They can build trust. And in many ways over here, you want to design an alliance. So I call it designing an alliance, but you might know it as creating rules in your classroom or agreements in your classroom. Right at the beginning of the year, you're going to talk to the kids. How is this classroom going to work? What do we need from each other? And if on some level they don't abide by the alliance, we have to hold them accountable. So oftentimes mutual respect will be one of the first ones that comes out. If I notice that a child is not practicing mutual respect, I need to call them on it. I need to say, are you practicing mutual respect? It's part of our alliance. Remember, we talked about this, and hold them accountable. If we always let it go, they're not going to abide by it. The next thing is to teach and model growth mindset. There are a lot of people who have what we would call a fixed mindset. So they're putting themselves down. They're not feeling good enough. And what we want to do is teach kids that they are good enough, that they can succeed. So instead of that fixed mindset, I'm so stupid, I can't do math, I can't draw, we're turning it around so that I'm not good at this math problem, but if I study harder or if I ask for help, I will improve. So looking into what growth mindset actually means. Just imagine, and this is the truth, I grew up with a fixed mindset that I was stupid. And it took me many years to develop that growth mindset away from the fixed mindset. You can use quality literature and videos to teach. There are so many excellent books and videos that are available to you. And my advice to you would be, no matter what you're teaching, bring emotional intelligence into it as often as you can. So if you're teaching literacy and you're reading stories or novels, it's going to be apparent. Stop and ask the students, is this person practicing emotional intelligence? What are the emotional intelligence skills? Or what skills are they lacking? And even those of you who are secondary teachers, you can still bring it into your discussion. Maybe not in chemistry, but certainly in history and English. drama, etc. As often as you can, use literature and videos to talk about emotional intelligence. And this one over here is very important. Teach and model emotional self-regulation. Many children who come from trauma are going to have difficulty for this because it's not being modeled for them at home. They are seeing parents who are angry, who are yelling. That kind of thing is inappropriate modeling. So it's not to say that you as a teacher are never going to feel angry. Of course you are. But you can stop and show them in a socially appropriate way. Right now I'm feeling angry because I'm trying to get the class to settle down so I continue with the math lesson. I'm just going to stop and I'm going to take a few deep breaths. Demonstrate the few deep breaths. You've modeled for them that it's okay to be angry, but you've modeled how you're going to handle it appropriately. You see in primary classrooms all the time emotional self-regulation charts, kindergartens, grade 1s, but all of a sudden it miraculously disappears in and around grade 2 or 3. I would have emotional self-regulation charts everywhere. If you're a secondary school teacher and you've been working with adolescents, you see a lack of emotional self-regulation all the time. Talk to them about it. It's not uncommon to have meltdowns in the classroom. So talk to them about it. Let them know that emotions are okay. Here are some ways that you can handle it though. The next thing would be to talk about sphere of influence. So this is an interesting one. This is the work of Stephen Covey. And what he says is that in our lives, we do have a sphere of influence. In other words, things that we can control and things that we can't. The reality is kids are not going to be able to control their parents' addictions or their parents' fighting or poverty or racism. They can't control it. But what they can do is know what's inside their sphere of influence so that they can have a measure of control. In their sphere of influence, it would be they could talk to a teacher or talk to a family friend. So let them know about sphere of influence and what they can and can't do. We heard a lot about this morning from Shelley, teaching mindfulness and maybe creating a peace corner. So I said this morning in this morning's group that this is more of a primary junior thing, but a couple people put in the chat that they have seen it in high school where there was a peace corner. And I just love that. I thought that's amazing. So teach mindfulness. Maybe it's that you just do 5 minutes of mindful practice a day, or maybe it is that right before they're going to start the class, this is true of elementary and secondary, do 5 minutes of breathing. How amazing before they get in to write an exam that you as the teacher lead a little mindfulness experience. Also, daily movement. In elementary school, you are required to do 20 minutes of daily physical activity. So make sure you do it. Don't take it away from the kids. Give them some time to move and stretch, etc. Then we're going to include creativity centers. Now, this is also an interesting one, very much like I said with emotional self-regulation. I go into primary classes, kindergarten and grade 1, they're loaded with these kinds of centers. There's a drama center, there's a paint center, there's a water and sand table, there's all of these kinds of great things. But all of a sudden they get to grade 2 and it's gone. Why not have an artistic or a creative center in your classroom? I'm not sure that would fly in secondary school because you as the teacher are often rotating and you don't have your own classroom. But in an elementary classroom, you could have it, and I would have it all the way up to grade 8. So that if the kids were feeling stressed or anxious, they could go and paint, or they could go and listen to music, put on the noise canceling headphones. What an amazing release for kids. I might also implement in my classroom down here some way for them to write, "Dear teacher," or have imaginary pen pals. So it's a free flowing of their thoughts, letting them get it out of their heads. And then over here, the wheel of choices, because for many of these kids of trauma, there is going to be some acting out. And so you want to make sure they understand they have a choice. They have control. They can emotionally self-regulate and they can take a choice. So if there is a problem, do they have to apologize? Or should they write an I message? Or do we have a community circle? Give them some choices and then let them know that they're making a choice, and that's all great. And then here are some things that you might be able to say to an anxious child or an anxious person, because this is true of adolescents as well. Let them know that they're safe with you, that you can be trusted. You also want to let them know it's okay to feel anxious or nervous or even to feel angry. You're telling them you do sometimes. Maybe you can facilitate a walk. In an elementary classroom, you can't leave the rest of the kids, but maybe you can get someone to take them for a walk, an educational assistant or somebody. Let them draw, as I said, or let them talk. I like this one, let's talk back to the worry. So giving them the agency to talk back, to work through the worry. Let them know that you are here for them, and let them know that you're going to sit together as they process the thoughts or the emotions, and then maybe get them doing some deep breathing. So all of these are little tricks that you can do, and it's not requiring you to give up any portion of your curriculum. It's not requiring you to change any different way you teach. Think about how you can bring all of these things into your everyday teaching as you teach whatever subject that you are working on that day. And then going back to what Shelley talked about, if you have kids of trauma in your class, and you will, there's no way you can get through your career without it. You want to make sure that you are paying attention to your own self-care, because sometimes these kids can be very, very draining. So one of the things you have to know is that you cannot fix it for them. Sometimes it is that teachers think, oh, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to change this kid's life. You can't change what's going on in their home. You can refer the family for social services. You can hook them up with different agencies and maybe different psychologists or social worker, but you can't fix it. So you need to understand that going into this profession. And then you also need to understand that there are going to be times when you need help. So seek help when you need it, because seeking help is a sign of strength and not weakness. So I'm going to stop the share now and just see if you have any questions. I'm also going to stop the recording.